Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So, today's draw with me is going to be kind of like differently formatted this time, just because I wanted to include a sketching session right at the beginning, because I did do some kind of like preliminary sketches and kind of just getting used to drawing the character before we do actually like a final illustration. But the rest of the video, like other than like the first 2 minutes or so, will not be in time-lapse mode, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So we are drawing, or I'm drawing, Amagi Hiro from OnStars or Ensemble Stars, which is another kind of like music idol rhythm game that I've been playing for a few months now. Yeah, a few months, because I started playing Ensemble Stars like maybe a couple of weeks after it had its English release. So yeah, I wanted to do a little bit of sketching of him before we do the illustration, because I usually do these in my sketchbook more often, that if I want to get used to drawing a character, I kind of need to draw their face and their outfit, or just like their whole demeanor or energy a couple of times before doing like a final illustration, just because like, especially like when I'm recording videos, I don't want to like dilly-dally for too long. But I guess that didn't really help for today's session. Today's session was, I think, actually fairly long. Maybe if I remember, I'll put the time, or I'll leave it in a pinned comment or something, just because it is getting quite late when I'm editing this. But yeah, so for this sketching session, I decided to use the 6B pencil this time, just to keep it simple. And I think using that right boru pen on Clip Studio Paint has been rubbing off on me. I'm really digging the texture a lot, and I haven't sketched with the 6B pencil in quite a while, what it feels like. And I used to really like sketching with it because it does have a very much like pencil feel, and I don't know if it's because like it's much more cleaner and I can get thinner lines with it than like an actual 6B pencil. It feels more like a mechanical pencil in a sense, so it's like very easy for me to work with, as I like working with pencil like quite a bit. So usually when I'm drawing kind of like these warm-up sketches, I usually do like a straight-on headshot of the character. Now, I've drawn Hiro before, and I tried to draw him in my sketchbook like once or twice in the past, and one thing I struggle with is definitely getting his hair shape correct, which is why I did like a straight-on face with his hair, just like casual clothing, so I can focus on his face basically. And then on the right of that, I did a more, I guess like waist up almost kind of version of him with the outfit that he usually is performing in. And then I did a quick little doodle of him in a jacket, because there's some cute cards of him. I'll put the inspiration of the card that I was using for the next illustration that I'm gonna do in a bit. But let's just quickly go through the sketching session, and as well as like the actual time-lapse version. If you guys do prefer seeing a time-lapse version with my hand in it for these kind of draw with me's, do let me know. I'm willing to switch it up. The reason why I'm doing voiceover instead of doing it like my usual drawing session where I usually talk while I draw is that usually I find it hard to actually talk and draw at the same time for several hours. Like I said in the past, that like sometimes my drawings take 2 to 3 hours, it can take 4 hours, it can take 6 hours, which why is usually like I keep my drawings fairly simple, especially for videos. If I'm doing like draw with me's and I'm not like speeding up the footage, I kind of let myself do whatever I want for ASMR videos, because I can just kind of edit it down for the most part. I kind of do like a 10-10-10 rule for myself for ASMR videos, so I can keep it contained to closer to half an hour. But yeah, so I'll leave the little card here. It's basically Hiro in, I think it's called the White Lily outfit. I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure like before it's bloomed, the card is called Innocent Prince, I think. I just think the card's really pretty, especially like when it's bloomed. The first card, I don't know if I'm gonna include it because I couldn't find the proper picture that wasn't like saved as like a web page thing, so you can probably search it up if you want to. I think it's called, if you just put Hiro Amagi or Amagi Hiro and then put, I think, Innocent Prince, you'll find the card. But basically it's just him kind of like kneeling and trying to grab the person's hand kind of thing. It's really cute, but the card that I really like is the White Lily one, because it's super pretty. The color palette's super pretty too. And I think before I got into Ensemble Stars, I was listening to like their music, because a thing that I like to do if I'm planning to play a rhythm game is like I want to be familiar with some of the songs. Because like if I don't really enjoy the music, why am I playing a rhythm game? So like I played Project Sekai, like Colorful Stage, and then I played obviously the Hatsune Miku. I think it's like the Diva Mix or whatever it's called. I do not remember what it's called. But basically I'm a Vocaloid fan, so like I knew songs from each of them, and I believe Project Sekai has some like popular pop songs too, like Japanese J-pop music as well, because I think King's on there. I think Ikanaide? I don't know how you pronounce it, or like what's the Romaji version kind of it, but I think it translates to don't leave or please don't go or something like that. There's like a bunch of songs on there that a lot of people know. I think there's like a Yoasobi song on there too. But yeah, before I get too sidetracked, yeah, what was I talking about? I think I was talking about prior to Ensemble Stars. So prior to playing Ensemble Stars, I was listening to a playlist, and the thumbnail actually had the White Lily Hito card. So that's what made me be like, you know, this is a pretty card. I'm liking the artwork for Ensemble Stars. Maybe I'll check it out. And I decided to check more of it out, and now I'm playing it, and now I'm stuck in this hellhole. Okay, so in terms of the drawing, so I don't know. I kind of like switched back and forth. I deleted some footage right at the beginning because I scrapped the entire canvas. So I got into a certain point, very similar to this stage, minus the hair, of a different pose. And I decided to scrap it because I was gonna have him look like he's offering you a flower, like the lily. But I decided that I wanted to do something closer to that card and have him laying on like grass or in a field or something. I believe in the card, he's laying like in a flower field with the white lilies like all over him. But the one that I wanted to do, I wanted to tackle a background, is kind of like my main objective. I've been trying my best to incorporate more backgrounds recently, but like knowing myself, I get quite lazy and very intimidated, so why not try to add a background while I draw a character that I quite enjoy. So yeah. And because like Hiro is gonna take up a good portion of the canvas, I just have to focus on like little parts here and there, and I had like a general idea of what I wanted in terms of like the atmosphere and a bit of the color palette, because it's gonna be significantly green. But I didn't go as warm as I probably would want it to. I think I do prefer like warmer color palettes, yet I prefer cooler colors. But whenever I work with green, it's definitely hard for me to do kind of like either equal amount of both or like to lean one way or the other, because I feel like I switch it up midway, which gets a little bit confusing. For sketching, so I did the head first, the eyes, the hair. I already threw in the body because I kind of wanted to do a laying pose, and then I start adding the other elements. So I start adding the clothing to the body and trying to make sure it makes sense. Which in some parts it doesn't, and I'll fix it during like the coloring and rendering cleaning up phase, and you'll see that. But right now I'm just kind of adding in the flowers. I did have a reference of the lilies, just random lilies that I could find, and I mainly used the reference for the first two lilies, and then the third one I decided to not use a reference because I added this way later than I would have liked. I think I mentioned earlier that this session for drawing, I guess like in terms of actual time, I did this in multiple sessions, so you're gonna see a change in lighting quite a bit. But yeah, I wanted to take my time drawing, so which is why I didn't want to do talking while drawing, so I'm doing the voiceover instead. And some people said they prefer voiceover for these kinds of sessions, so I can provide more insight or hindsight for like the drawing and illustration process, or just like giving my final opinions because I already knew what is going on and what the final result's gonna look like. But at this point, let me talk about the drawing again. So I duplicated my sketch as usual, and then I am going to set my first sketch to multiply and hide my second sketch. So I will also change the hue and saturation of the first sketch to make sure that did I repeat this portion? I'm not too sure. Apologies if I did, but basically I would do this to make sure that the colors match a little bit closer. I like to make the lines a little bit more warmer, if anything, so I'm kind of doing this to prep myself for the coloring portion. But I decided that I did the background all in time lapse because I took probably way too long fiddling with how I wanted to do the background. So I knew that I wanted him to be on some kind of like grassy or a leaf pile or something with more foliage. And you can see on the top right, or even like the top center part, I had more like leaves or like silhouette of leaves, because I was thinking like maybe I'll just have simple background with just like peering of like light and kind of like the basically like the scattering of light through the leaves. But I decided that maybe it wouldn't work, so I decided to switch it up and do some grass, do some clovers kind of like everywhere, so he's kind of laying in more of a little bit of a environment, I guess, if that makes sense, like on the ground. But yeah, so it's like a mixture of a bunch of greens, a lot of blues, because I love deepening greens and foliage with like bright blues if I can. I tend to keep things very bright, so that's just something like I gravitate towards. I know like realistically it doesn't really make sense, but color wise I definitely prefer this. Eventually I'll add like a multiply layer and kind of darken up the shadows, and then while we get into like more of the coloring, I'll overlap some of the foliage and stuff over Hiro. I'm gonna mispronounce his name like several times, I feel like, but yeah, I'm gonna put it in front so that it looks like he's actually like in the grass or in the foliage rather than just sitting oddly on like a plane of glass on top or something, because right now he's kind of like floating above, which doesn't really make sense. So I really need to kind of like embed him into here. But I'm just kind of doing like random shapes more closer to the figure. I try to make sure that it looks a little bit more clear. Now, something I'm gonna forget to do at the very end is that I merged everything and then duplicated it, blurred the duplicated version, like as I usually do. There's like a couple of videos I've done this, and then I'll slowly erase it so that the edges are kind of blurred and it kind of feathers into more in focus towards where I want to target, I guess, like the focus, which tends to be the face and the rest of Hiro. So yeah, added some extra lighting, and then I believe I merged the background layers so that I can prepare to just have less layers for myself, so I don't have to scroll through so much on the iPad. I think I've talked about this before, but I use less layers on the iPad for a specific reason, because I don't really like scrolling up and down on the iPad. I think it's much easier to see it on like desktop and stuff, so I don't mind using more layers on like Paint Tool SI or Clip Studio Paint on the computer. But it's also like if I'm doing more of a painterly approach, kind of like what I usually do on the iPad, I like having less layers. But if I'm doing stuff with line art, I will go ham with as many layers as I need. So if you want to look at how many layers I use for like anything with line art, it's like a lot of layers, like 30 plus minimum. It can go up to 100. It can go up to, I don't know what I was drawing. I think I was drawing like the members of 17. So there's like 13 of them. And I definitely hit the cap in Paint Tool SI, which is like 200 and something, either like 240 something or 260 something, I'm not too sure. But I did hit the cap and I had to merge layers. So just basically do your layer maintenance to however you like. I know some people love to add folders. I know some people like to name everything. So you name your layers, you can name your folders or whatever. I use folders a lot, but I never name my layers. I'm very disorganized. But I also think, I don't know if it's only in Paint Tool SI, I believe it's in Clip Studio Paint too. I don't know if it's Control and Shift. You guys can test this out. But if you hold Control and Shift, or maybe it's just Control, and you click around with your tablet pen, it actually shows you which layer it's on, or directly takes you to that layer, so it's a lot easier. So if you ever find like a speckle on your canvas, just try that out and see if you can just like directly locate that layer. I just went on like the biggest tangent ever. Okay, so I decided to do the skin first as usual. Once I do the skin, I lock the, oh no, I do like the base of the skin, then I lock it, and then I add any shading to the skin and everything. I will do the eyes next, because usually the eyes are like contained within like the skin for me, because it's within the face. So after that, I will unlock it so I can do the hair. I feel like I've been drawing so many people with red hair recently. It might be because I drew Suo last time, like Tsukasa Suo. He's also from Ensemble Stars. And then I drew D-Luke, I think. Anyone else? Not too sure. But now we're drawing Hiro again, so So in the past, I actually drew Hiro before, but I didn't really like how it looked. Like at the time I liked it, but the more I look at it now, I don't like it. So I kind of wanted to have a redemption, but I don't know how to feel about this one. I'll talk about my thoughts more about closer to the end. For the hair, I like to add kind of like a base color first, which is that kind of light orangey red that I'm using even right now. And then I will move towards one side, especially like if I have a strong light on the right. I will move darker and even more saturated depending on like how I'm feeling, because like especially for red hair, I add like bright purples sometimes into the hair to do the shadows. So as I'm moving to the left, I will make it darker, just kind of as a more seamless transition. And then once I get like basic shadows in, I will add in the highlights. And at this point, I'm adding kind of like this pale orange and kind of indicating where I want the light to be. I know at this point, the highlights in his eyes are not in the correct position. It should be closer to the right side, but in the end, I'll put it in the middle, because if it doesn't really make sense that the highlights are on the left if my light is coming from the right. So, I believe there's like an app or a website or something. I don't remember what it's called, but you can do like the lighting for your artwork, I think, right? I think it depends on how you shade your work as well. Like if it has more dimension already, I think it's easier to use that application or something. But I believe if you have more flatter artwork, it's hard for it to work anyways. But I thought it was fun and kind of cool to see other people use it. It's kind of cool. But yeah, here are the purple areas that I'm adding to his hair. I didn't go too crazy with it. I definitely could have added either like the dark blue from the background or even the blue from his eyes into his hair a little bit more. And I think that would have been actually quite nice. Probably should have added like the greenish blue into his hair, especially like where it's making contact to the actual like foliage and stuff on the ground, the grass and stuff. So working with white, I didn't really push that much with the different hues that I was putting in the white. I think I play around with it more in the lilies and in his gloves, which I think the lilies and the gloves probably my favorite parts of the drawing. I don't know. I think it just looks nice with the texture and kind of less of the blending of the colors where I'm trying to make things smooth. I kind of just let the shapes kind of be, and it works out because the colors that I used, I don't know, it just indicates it really well, I think. Everything else I kind of got a little lazy because like I said, the session got a bit long. Actually, let me check right now. Let's see. But yeah, because like I feel like I have nothing to talk about if I'm just doing like mostly base colors. Let me see how long this session took. I believe it's like, I feel like it's like really long. Let's check. Canvas information. Oh, it's actually a lot shorter than I thought. I was expecting like 7 to 8 hours, which would have been an ungodly amount of footage to edit down for real time, but it was only 5 hours and 23 minutes. So it's actually not too bad. So I could have took more time to really just like flesh out his clothing, because I'm being very timid, I think, with the shadows. I know I'm gonna add like extra shadows and stuff with the multiply layer, but I'm being very timid with it. So in terms of like the idea of coming up with the illustration, so like I said, I'm kind of basing it off of just like the general idea of what the card looks like. He's already laying, but he's laying in a much more obviously interesting pose, because you're kind of looking at him from like almost the crown of his head going down. I don't know how to explain it. Like, you guys seen the card, I put it in the video. But I do like that pose a lot, but I definitely wanted to like, you know, do a little bit of a nod towards the original version. Okay, so now I locked the sketch and then I am going to color over my sketch. So this is going to give more of an easier way for me to match the sketch color to each area. So I'm kind of just being very rough with this though. So I'm keeping the hands a little bit more on the grayish side for their line work or the sketch color, and then near the face I'm kind of keeping it nice and warm. And it's because I use my sketch as the line art basically, and then once I merge it, it's just easier for me to deal with the colors that I already have on the canvas rather than always color picking, because I believe that makes things a lot slower. At this point, I've already merged my layers. So I merged my sketch layer on top of the color layer that I've already done. And now I made a new layer and then added a addition layer. So I could do some additional lighting, make things a little bit brighter. Also, so I kind of have a little bit more of an intense lighting situation. After that, I made another new layer, clipped it. So both my lighting layers, so the addition layer and the multiply layer, which is what I'm using right now, are clipped to the drawing of Hiro. So this thing that's clipped to is both the color and the sketch merged together, so that I don't really have to worry about, like, you know, doing the multiply on the sketch separately and then on the color separately. You can do it all together. I thought the lighting looked too intense. I definitely kept it a little bit on the cooler side, but I did lock the multiply layer and then fiddle it with the different hues that we could get because I wanted it to be a little bit warmer on the face. I didn't mind if it was a little bit more blue towards the body. So yeah, and I always lower down the intensity of both the addition layer and the multiply layer because I almost never use them at full opacity, but I also added a multiply layer right underneath where Hiro is, and it's like right on top of the background so that we can add it so it looks kind of like he's sitting on top. But to help with the weight of Hiro, I guess, on top of the foliage and the plants, I am going to paint over top, so don't worry about that, because right now he literally looks like he's laying on like a flat surface, like as if like a piece of glass is on top of this foliage and stuff, because his hair looks like it's like splayed out, but it's not like going into the foliage, which definitely bothered me, so I'm going to fix that eventually. But yeah, a lot of the times whenever I add multiply to like a drawing for shadow, I try to adjust the colors, so I would lock the layer and kind of just like airbrush over a little bit to make sure that, you know, it's not this one solid color going through, because I think that makes your drawing look a little bit more flat. Also, if you have like a nice warm lighting on your figure or on an object or whatever, and it kind of wants to retain a little bit of that warmth around the edges of the shadow, you can definitely do that by locking it and then slowly airbrushing a warmer color, so you can have a little bit more of a variation within your shadow. It looks a little bit natural, but also just better contrast as well. So before moving on to the actual cleaning and rendering, I wanted to add more foreground elements just to make sure that I don't lose sight of my idea. Also having proportional issues. I am going to keep fixing his arm because it sticks out a little bit too much, and it should be more like hugging his body. I'm not even too sure. I feel like doing voiceover, I'm more rambly. I know some of you guys don't mind, and I appreciate that. I did not want gradient map. Let's blur these because I want these a little bit more in the foreground, not in the focus. And then I'm adding an extra additional layer so we can add some lightings to the leaves. And then I'm gonna blur that and make sure it's a little bit more subtle so that it's not too bright. And then eventually I'll hide this because I don't really need to take this into consideration until a little bit later. So I merged my background layers, and then I merged all my effect layers that I had on Hiro. So I merged them in order. So I merged the multiply layer and then the addition layer on top of the already merged sketch and colored layer, so that, you know, we can just paint on top of this layer. You can even make a new layer. I've seen like a bunch of people make a new layer and paint over top, but I definitely like painting on top, or not on top, painting on the same layer that I have everything on, just because I want the ability to erase while I work, especially because I always separate, especially like the figure from the background when painting, because if I have like gradations or like many shapes around the figure, it's harder for me to clean up, let's say like the little sketchy lines around his hair and stuff, without having to use like a bunch of colors from the background to spruce it up, if that makes sense. It's easier for me just to use the eraser tool to clean up the edges. So for this stage of rendering, kind of cleaning up things, I hop around so often, so usually I work on the mouth first. I always find that like a safe area, just seeing how I feel. It's just very simple and I can kind of gauge where I'm at. But then I would either work on the face, I work on the eyes, I work on the hair. That's typically where I work. So I would usually work on the face and head first before working on the rest of the body. So for me, I did work on the hair a little bit, but then my main focus I wanted to fix was actually the eyes. So you could see that I blocked out the eyes once again, kind of got rid of everything because I was trying to mimic the actual ensemble stars style, but because they have more of a cell shaded style, they have like lines in the eyes that makes more sense. But for me, with the way how I work, I like having like kind of like a gradation from the upper eye line to the bottom, going dark to light usually, and putting that extra line kind of near the pupil kind of made everything look a little bit too intense and too dark. So I kind of lost that vibrancy of his eyes. So I decided just to kind of more or less just do it how I usually do it. So I just left it as just a simple pupil, add a little bit of color underneath, and we're good to go. So it wasn't too big of a fix, but it was a little bit what I would deem it would needed a change. So yeah, and I kind of shifted the highlight a little bit. I didn't like what it looked like with it on the right entirely. I think it's because his hair cuts into his left eye and it kind of blocks out the highlight and it kind of makes him look like he's dead inside, and I don't want that. Yeah, so I'm just kind of sprucing up his hair, making sure that lines look a little bit clean, also getting rid of any of these sketchy lines. So if you take care of your sketch more than I do and kind of like make sure things are thoroughly prepped before merging everything, you can probably eliminate a lot of these steps of cleaning up these wobbly lines or any of these sketchy lines where they shouldn't need to be, whether or not like you deem it necessary or not. For me, it's like if I took the time, I could have made things easier, but if not, like it's no big problem. It's just an extra step now. I did add some of the leaves and the grass in front of him, so hopefully in the final product it definitely looks like he's kind of like nestled his way into this little foliage and grass and stuff, because yeah, I definitely didn't want it to look like it's too flat. I don't think it reads the best, but at least it's an attempt. Like I was aware of it, and I think that's okay. I'm gonna slowly tackle backgrounds a little bit more. I definitely want to do kind of more of a deep dive. It'd be fun to like paint some screenshots from like inside of Genshin Impact. I think that would be fun. Yeah, I think looking at the lilies, I actually really like how they look. I don't know if it's the mixture of that weird kind of grayish greenish tone that I have throughout the leaves with this warm cream color. It just looks pretty in my opinion. And then I add a little bit more contrast by adding a little bit of those lines, and then yeah, I think I did something similar for the gloves, which is why I really like them. And I really like rendering and cleaning up and kind of just coloring gloves, especially if they feel like more either like leather or like more of a satiny material. I think I did an okay job on the gloves for his outfit. I think it reads the way I want it to be. I believe his hands do look a little bit wonky, but in terms of the coloring, I do like it. Let's see. So usually the sketching session that I do prior to these kinds of illustrations where I'm drawing like a character I'm unfamiliar with, I would actually draw them in the same outfit. For some reason, it didn't really cross my mind. I was like, oh, I'll draw Hiro in his like normal outfit. And then his outfit that he usually wears, I think it's in Kiss of Life, that one. It's like for sure they're wearing those outfits. Probably like Moratorium Wings as well. Those are like two songs I highly recommend you listen to. What else is there? And then I drew the one with the jacket, which I like all his outfits. I think they're really cute. I also like all of Suo's outfits. Tsukasa Suo. Both of them I feel like they're like my sons. I just want to protect them, that's it. I just think they're like very endearing, very cute. But I think that's what I like about ensemble stars though. They have very cute characters. They feel like the younger brother type to me. Maybe that's why I feel like I want to protect them. Kind of feeling that I'm just old. I'm old. I'm getting old. But yeah, I'm just kind of sprucing things up. There's nothing too much to talk about. Other than, I think at some point, there's like part of the jacket that I decided to push to the side even more because I didn't really look into his outfit too much when I was sketching. So there's like a lot of things I needed to fix, which I could have kind of remedied that, like I said before, if I actually did like preliminary sketches of the outfit that I wanted to actually draw him in. It would have made more sense rather than just like random ones. But I guess like my main concern was actually the hair, so I don't know. I don't know. I'm adding a little bit of a pattern. I did get lazy with this, but yeah, gloves again. I really like the gloves. I don't know why. I really do like characters with gloves though. I don't know, is it because it's classy looking? I don't know if it is. It feels like butlerish, so I don't know. Maybe I don't like it. I don't know. Yeah, but I definitely want to do another piece. Because my other one, like I said, was I wanted him to be like offering you the lily, and I thought it'd be really nice to have it very airy and light. But I think I talked about this before too. It's like airy and light compositions or like color schemes I struggle with. I always go bright colors, a little bit higher contrast, because that's like what I gravitate towards. So maybe next time I'll try to challenge myself to keep it fairly light in terms of the color palette or something. We'll see, because I've done like darker color schemes, I've done intense lighting and kind of like that area, but I've never done really the opposite where it's like soft lighting, softer colors. I don't know, there's like a level of contrast I always want to achieve with my pieces, but sometimes I think it makes it look too busy. Okay, so I finished rendering Hiro, so I decided to add a multiply layer on top of the whole thing and decided to do kind of like this leaf pattern with a kind of bluish green. And because it's set onto multiply, it kind of sits on top of the previous layers. So now I just used Gaussian blur to make sure it's out of focus, and I am alpha locking the leaves, and then I'm brushing in any other colors that I want. I tried to make some areas warmer and some places cooler, and then I made a new layer, added an addition layer, and basically I'm adding more light streaming through, because me doing the random shapes for the leaves never looks as nice as I want it to, so I like to add extra light via this way. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Basically the same thing, random shapes. I'm gonna Gaussian blur it, I'm gonna lock it, I'm gonna try to adjust the colors a little bit, but I think this way with the multiply layer makes it look more like that light is streaming through, and it looks a lot prettier in my opinion. I've done this several times, and this is how I like to do it the best. I know some people can do it more proficiently, but I like doing it this way. I know it's not the best way to do it, but it works out in the end and kind of gets the vibe that I want. What is the last thing? So last thing I like to do with a lot of my illustrations recently is I like adding an overlay layer and kind of just messing around with the colors. So I'm not gonna leave it like this, don't worry. After I add like an array of different colors, I kind of dim it down quite a bit, kind of anywhere around, I think 33% and below, just to give it a subtle color shift in some places. I just think it looks a little bit prettier. Like I said, I like to fiddle with the colors a bit. And last thing I'm gonna do is actually make the light stream in, just to make it make a little bit more sense. It might be a little bit too much light, but I think that's okay. I feel like I should not do these voiceovers all in one session, but for some reason I still like doing it this way. But hopefully you guys enjoy today's session. I know it's quite long and rambly, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the sketching session prior to this, as well as the finished illustration. I tried my best to include as much as I could, but because it was a 5-hour session and then 45 minutes I believe on the sketchings at the very beginning. I'm just slurring all my words. I'm like delusional right now or delirious. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video, and do let me know what you guys prefer in terms of format of the videos and stuff, and I'll definitely kind of make some changes and stuff if I can. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye!